Hello and welcome to this review of my Univac 1710 keyboard. This model is very similar to the 1701 I unboxed a while ago, but it's a bit different in a number of ways. That one was a new old stock board with microswitch SW series Hall effect switches, while this one is a heavily used unit with microswitch switches, or MSMSS as I call them, which are super cool switches I'll tell you about in a bit. I hope to one day show you the new old stock one working through a converter, but for now I'm going to concentrate on this one. It's very old. I don't know the exact date of manufacture, but the Univac 1710 was introduced in 1969, and this was an era in which keyboards were generally fairly small in contrast to what many people might think. Most people associate vintage keyboards with titanic behemoths like the IBM Battleship or the Chiron aircraft carrier, which is this thing here. But in the early 70s, many boards had a form factor that more closely resembled that of a typewriter, which is more like what we nowadays call a 60%. The Univac 1710 interpreting card punch was a computer system that worked with punch cards. This early type of system is very far removed from what we'd associate with modern computers. In fact, card punches like this weren't really even a computer, it was really just a device to put commands or data on cards like this, which could then be read by another system which would execute whatever was on the card. There were several formats, but one of the most common ones was this IBM type. Each of these cards had 80 columns, each of which comprised a single character using a combination of punches made into 12 different rows. Here you can see an example card listing the combinations that comprise each character. Naturally, with only 80 characters, a single card couldn't get much done, so an actual program would take quite a few cards to build. Here's an example of a program in punch card format, and yes, it would have to read all of those cards in succession to build that program. The fact that it's a punch card system explains a lot of the weird keys. Things like eject, feed, skip, and column duplicate make a lot more sense in that light. There are also several strange numeric legends on the keyboard that will have had to do with that, such as -11, 12-0, and 11-0, 0-8-2, and ampersand -12. This makes it sound like it was definitely a 12-column system, but I'm not exactly sure what all of this would have done. Maybe someone with more experience with these systems can clarify. There are also a bunch of levers that had associated functions such as program, auto or manual, load program or load data, punch or verify, and print or off, as well as this one here, which would have read zero fill or blank fill, but the bit at the top is missing. They're very satisfying to play around with. I could do this all day. There is also a Numeric Keypad embedded as a layer on the layout, although it's upside down compared to a modern numpad. Whomever used this keyboard must have really gone to town on these number keys, especially because, as you can see, they've been used so heavily that they've largely eroded with huge dents in the keycaps. Thankfully, the keycaps are double-shot ABS, so even though they've practically worn to the bone, the lettering is still visible. They're uniprofile with spherical keytops and a unique rounded square shape. They're pretty cool. Many keyboards back in those days had keys shaped more like barrels than like the keycaps we'd encounter nowadays. Their 8 homing keys use flat tops with a kind of dimple instead. The spacebar is quite small, only about 6 units, and completely flat. The stabilizer on the left side is a bit wonky, but it works fine on the right side. I'm not sure what's causing that. It's quite stiff too, way more so than the standard keys. And now for the switches, which are possibly the coolest part of the keyboard, and what I originally bought it for. They are microswitch switches, as I mentioned before, and I did a teardown video on them a while back. They are switches made by microswitch with an actual microswitch inside, hence my moniker of MSMSS for them. I have some new old stock ones that I might use to repair the broken one on the keyboard, although I don't have the accompanying keycap for it. They consist of a tall grey shell surrounding a microswitch. The shell is fitted with a tall slider that engages a horizontally sliding plate, which in turn is able to press on a lever attached to the actual microswitch, thereby actuating it. This rather unconventional, if not completely unique mechanism results in a design that is a double record holder, both in height, 5 centimeters top to bottom, not counting the contacts, and in parts count, 21 parts, way more compared to Futaba Complicated Linear, which holds the second place at 16. Compare that to Cherry MX Blue, which only has 7 parts. The strange construction and workings of these switches is why I've been aching to show you guys one of these, and to try them out for myself, of course. The key feel is, predictably, completely unique. I've never felt anything like it. It has a quite noticeable but rather indirect feeling, slow-moving tactile bump, and it's kind of medium stiffly weighted. I can't really say whether it feels smooth or not because of how the mechanism works, but it does bind a bit, presumably due to how bad of a condition it's in, because not all the keys bind equally badly. One thing of note is that it makes one of the most satisfying typing noises I've ever heard in a keyboard. Listen to this. Bully delightful. The build quality of the board is quite something too, not including the giant cable, which is an incredible 11mm thick, by the way. It weighs about 2.1 kilos, or about 18.5 quarter-pounders in imperial units. The weight's a bit surprising, especially considering how small it is, because the entire case, top and bottom, as well as the barrel plate, are all plastic. It's got double thickness FR4 PCB with God knows how much wiring and components, including 2 rather chunky looking, what are they, relays? And a lot of other shit on it, and even pillars, making for a pretty busy looking hole. Here you can see how the spacebar stabilizer works as well. The connector isn't quite USB, so obviously I can't really use it on a modern computer at the moment, but overall it's a very cool keyboard, quite a fun thing really. I'm really happy I got hold of one of these. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.